Ava is not the only one that mentioned to me that the timing isn't always the best. In fact, even for Len and Celia, it's difficult because they have to go. I wanted to get a consensus and try something for a few weeks just to see how it goes and see if we did it earlier. I'm getting no's because what I want to do is I wanted to do a 9:15 to 10:45. Or not
That's my exercise class.
Your exercise class, but you can exercise and watch me at the same time.
No, it's not in my apartment. Sorry.
I'm never going to be able to satisfy everyone. I know that for sure. But what I want to do is I want to do for a few weeks just to try it, do it earlier so that people have the day free and it doesn't interact with hopefully everybody's medical appointments and everything everybody has to do. For me, listen, I'm up at 6:30. 6:30. I would happy to teach at 7 to 8 before the minyan. You know, the minyan starts at 8. I would teach at 7 a.m. Get it done, and we're done. Learn and start a fresh way of the day. But not everybody wants to come and listen to me at 7. You want to have a coffee. So I don't know what to do, but I want to try a couple weeks at 9:15 just to see. Let's see how it goes. And if nobody comes, it'll speak volumes, and then we'll know what to do. I can do it in the evenings too, you know, but I don't want to interrupt people's evenings. You get enough, you're inundated with programs and lectures and this and that. And I figured, you know, I'm not going to draw 200 more people just because I do it in the evening. Those that want to learn about this will come, and those that don't. Anyway, we made a transition from technology, from discussing in vitro and artificial insemination. And that's part of technology because, you know, in vitro, when you're creating, fertilizing an egg in a laboratory, or you're doing an artificial insemination, these are all forms of technology that have been halachically approved by many of the rabbis. We talked about that. There are people that are okay with one and not the other. They don't like in vitro, they like artificial. There's always going to be a stance by someone alone who's going to say, I don't approve of something. So then we moved into a very, every issue is controversial, everything. So there's, you know, sometimes I always remind myself to say to you, I'm not sharing Marshall Loomer's opinions. My opinion means nothing. And I'm not telling you what I think or what I feel. I mean, I might interject and say, I think this is ridiculous, but really, and Isaac, feel free to correct me. We have medical people here, we have doctors here. So I'm always good with being reminded or corrected on different things. But what I'm trying to do is share what the rabbis are telling us about different issues. When you talk about abortion, especially right now with Roe v. Wade being challenged in the United States. I mean, I won't get into my own political views. I'd love to just tell you, I think the whole thing's crazy and ridiculous to start challenging that at this day and age, not to allow women to have free will. I mean, what are we going back before the suffragettes here? I mean, to me, it's crazy. But yet I was up north for 2 days. I went up on Sunday to Crystal Falls. It's near Sturgeon Falls. It's this property that I bought. I've spoken about it before. And if you ever want to stop having vacations, you want all your vacations to end, buy a piece of property. When I rented for a week, you went up there, you had a good time, you gave them the key, you walked away, it was showing. Now you go up, the water line is leaking, the electricity doesn't work, the appliances are broken, it's just, you have to cut the grass, it's a pain in the neck and it's a lot of work, but I like the relationships with the people up there. I'm meeting a lot of interesting people. Now keep in mind, you have people that live up there all year round. I don't want to speak about them in a negative way, with very low education. It's not their fault. They might have grade 4, grade 5, maybe, and the language skills are not there. They've never read a book. I know a man up there. He's extremely creative. He can fix anything. Yet he can't write. To me, it's shocking that in 2022, I know people that cannot write. His reading isn't so good either, but he cannot write. So I found this out one time when I went with him to pick up a part at Home Depot, and he's 58 years old. And I said to him, just write out the numbers for me of what I have to buy for the the pieces of the wood, like say whatever it is I have to buy, all the supplies while we're there. And he turned to me, and I thought he was going to die of embarrassment. And then I put my arm around him. I said, I will help you. I'm going to do it. You just tell me what, I'm going to write it out. And I realized he could not write at 58. So up there, you have people that live up there, and then you have people that they're like me. They come up for 2 days, they look at the lake and they go home. It's beautiful, and we're lucky the way we live. Not everybody is like that. So I'm a visitor, and I'm respectful to people. But yet I met a couple, and the man is the board of the Catholic Medical Ethics Foundation or Society or organization, whatever it is. And he served to the priesthood on their standards of medical ethics. So did we ever have discussions? It was unbelievable. All of a sudden I'm speaking to somebody and we're talking about the differences between. It's surprising how Judaism, how halacha sometimes follows in line with the Catholic approach, but then sometimes we split. We have ways of thinking that are different than them. So he's sending me a lot of the information. I'm reading through it to see the differences. Now, obviously, we know what the stance is in Catholicism on abortion, right? Forget it. It's not even in their vocabulary, really. So last week, I introduced this topic. How do we learn halacha, first of all, again? I start every course with this because it's a reminder. We have to find a way of attaching Jewish law to the Torah. And attaching to the Torah is sometimes very far-fetched. Sometimes you're looking for something and you're saying, oh, does this really connect? You're not allowed to perform the violation of smoothing leathers is one of the malachas, one of the 9 categories of violations on Shabbat. If you were to smooth leather, which means removing the hair from the hide and smoothing it down, they apply that to, well, can you put chapstick on, or can you put lipstick on, or can you put cream on your eczema or your psoriasis on Shabbat? Can you put lotions because you're smoothing? We're going to talk about that, not in this series, but when we go back to the laws of Shabbat and future things, you'll remember this. You'll say, oh yeah, Marshall mentioned a source in the Torah about smoothing. How does that apply to putting on a lotion? You need it for your skin. And some of the rabbis were very strict in our time that said you can't put a cream on a diaper for a baby who has a rash because it might be spreading out. And I think that's, in today's day and age, it gets a little crazy, right? So the source in the Torah begins for the issue of abortion. It says in Shemot, it says, 2 men are fighting with each other, and there's a person, an innocent bystander over there, and she happens to be a pregnant woman. And one of the men, he's swinging and he's hitting the other man. He accidentally delivers a blow to her right in her abdomen. And the blow to her body, it says in the Torah, it says, cause the children to come out. What does that mean? It caused the children to come out. It means he caused an abortion. He caused the woman to give birth to these babies. Well, the question became, what happens in a court of law situation? What happens in the Talmud? Because now we go to the Talmud, and then we go to the Rambam, and then we go to the Shulchan Aruch, and then we go to the Ashkenazi side, the Ramah, and then we go to the modern sources, and we see, what do they do today in the Shaare Zedek Hospital? What do we do in the Torah observant hospitals? What does the Rav Eliezer Yehuda Waldenberg say about this? What does Rav Moshe Feinstein say about this? What does all of the modern Orthodox rabbis say about this? And what do the conservative and Reform rabbis say about this? So it's clear that the Gemara says there has to be some kind of retribution made. Something has to be paid to this, for the woman who got hit. And it says that the rabbis will have to decide how much money that the man who delivered the blow will have to pay. And then it says, but it's only true if he hits her, but causes a disaster. On the other hand, it says, if it's a disastrous event, then and kills her, then it's a capital crime, and the death penalty would be imposed. And then it says that it teaches us that there are two kinds of abortion. One is a more serious kind, and one is a less serious kind. It's shocking. One is a more serious kind, and one is a less serious. I think they're both serious. In the less serious kind, that is considered not to be a disaster, it's only a matter of a financial retribution. Financial. I didn't kill the woman. The babies happened to die in the fact that I delivered a blow. Tell that to a pregnant woman, that it's not disastrous because her babies only died. How does the Gemara make peace with this? How do you tell somebody, this is not a disaster? You didn't die. Only the babies died. The baby. Well, the Gemara says that the disaster that we are referring to depends on death. If death was involved, then there's a life for a life. That's what it said. And then the verse doesn't continue, and it's silent on who died in this case. And then we have to start to determine. You see, what is happening here, and we're going to see this, I'll let the, what is the expression, the cat out of the bag a little bit. What we're going to see is what the sources, what the old sources are trying to tell us, is that until a baby is born, and we will discuss what determines a baby being born. Does halacha say the whole baby has to be born, or just part of the baby has to be emerged? So we don't even know where the fine line in the law is there. But what it's saying is, basically, if you have a heart and a kidney and a liver and a pancreas, and those are considered organs in your body. A baby inside of you at that stage is considered like any other organ of your body. So in other words, it's not considered a baby because it hasn't emerged yet. It's an appendage to you. It's inside, but it's a part of your body. It's a part of your body. So what they're saying is, if I put my arm out and somebody was swinging a chainsaw and my arm accidentally got cut off, he cut my arm off. You pay me. I have no arm now. I was a driver. I drove with my left hand. I can't make a living. Now you gotta have to, right? But with the baby that's inside that is not yet born, Jewish law is not necessarily determining that to be a baby. So we look at the oldest commentary on the Torah, known as Unkelos. We've all heard of Unkelos because we all go to shul and we hear rabbis at the Sudash Shlishit, and they talk about, who do they talk about? Rashi says, and Unkelos says. I don't know whether Unkelos was rich or not. I don't know enough about Unkelos, but I can tell you Rashi was extremely wealthy. among other things, he was a winemaker. He had wineries. He was wealthy. He could afford to sit and study and write and do. But it's very clear in Unkelos. You ever seen the Rushi wine? If you go to the liquor store, you'll see a brand called Rushi. It isn't his, believe me, but it reminds me whenever I see it. I go, I wonder, can you imagine if that legacy continued all those years and we could buy a bottle of Rushi wine? Anyway, and even there's all kinds of halachas regarding wine and wine vinegar, and that's a whole nother topic altogether. In the Gemara it talks about what happens if if you do something at turn of events that it says superstitiously your wine will turn to vinegar. So it makes it very clear that there is a death, but it doesn't say who died, right? So we didn't get to that. So in the Greek Christianized version of the Torah, because we always think of our Torah, but what about there's other versions of Torah? There's other versions of Bible out there. There's King James, so it says on the verse that it's a death of a fetus, it leads to a death penalty. This is different than the Jewish thinking. So when I talked about meeting this person who is on the Catholic Board of Medical Ethics, they have a different understanding of what the law will be because they have a different translation and understanding of what the Bible says. If you have a book that says one thing and I'm comparing it to a book that says something else, we might come to a different conclusion because we have two different books. So when I'm talking about the Torah says, and he says the Torah says, or the Bible says, I'm going, where did he get that from? My Bible, my Torah doesn't say that. But in the Greek Christianized version, on this verse, it says specifically that the death of a fetus, which leads strictly to a death penalty, and then to us, in our Jewish law, according to the rabbinic sources, the death penalty is only imposed for taking the mother's life. Never talked about taking a death penalty being imposed if you accidentally, the man struck a blow and caused the babies to come out, which means in our terms caused an abortion to happen. He doesn't get the death penalty. So from the time of pregnancy and for the whole term of pregnancy, destruction of that fetus is not a capital offense. And in our rabbinic and our rabbis' traditions, it does not call for the death penalty, period. So that we have an understanding of that. It's important for later. We have to be clear on that it's not a capital offense according to our rabbinic traditions. And we are Jews that follow our rabbis. So it doesn't matter whether we like it or not. That's the way it is. So then we go forward and we look at if that's true, then if halacha is going to consider that fetus of a person, of the fetus of as being a person, then taking the life of the fetus would be a capital offense. And therefore the death penalty would apply. But that's not necessarily the case. So if the fetus is not considered a person, it's not a person. It's a part of the body like any other organ, like a heart or a liver or a kidney or a pancreas or whatever else is going on inside my kishkas. It's part of the mother. It's part of her body, but it's not considered rabbinically. So the mother of this baby inside of her, the fetus, she has kidneys, she has liver, she has a pancreas. She's got everything that all of us have, hopefully, God willing. And that fetus is only a part of her. If she does not die, for example, I said, your arm gets cut off. This is the whole premise of where we're going to be going for this. Nobody's going to put me to death, even in our society. Forget Jewish law, because I God forbid, cut David Goldberg's arm off with a chainsaw. Chas v'chalila, David. You need it, you'll have it for many years. But I'm saying, I wouldn't get the death penalty, but certainly my life would not be easy. I'd have to face David every day and he'd say, look what you did to me. So we wouldn't want that. It'll never happen. But you see how, what if a leg on its own became gangrenous and developed a disease or an illness and they had to cut it off? Would you cut it off to try to save that person's life? Yes or no? David says yes. Tina says yes. Ruth says yes. Adele and Marvin say yes. I think Faye's saying yes too. If you have even Ava, if you have a gangrenous leg, it's in really bad shape, and they say, we're going to amputate because this is going to save the person's life. I think, including myself, all of us, all 14 of us will agree on a consensus that we're going to try and save this person's life and cut off the leg. All right. You'll see where I'm going with this. Rashi. We talked about Ankelos. Let's go to the Rashi. Rashi says, when they say about the verse about the woman who was struck and it was disastrous and it should lead to the death penalty, that's if the woman got killed, which is the opposite of how the Christian theologians would think. If I asked this man, and I didn't ask him that question the other day because actually it didn't even dawn on me. I will. I'm communicating with now by email. It's fascinating, the people that you meet up there, you know. Just because somebody's wearing a plaid shirt and dirty jeans because they just were in the blotte fixing a leak in the pipe doesn't mean that they're... So this man, he's quite a fascinating person. But what I had to put my head around was we don't have the same Torah. We meet Christians and we always want to say, oh, you know what? We're all the same. We all believe in the same God. We do. They have an extra God. They have Jesus. We don't have Jesus. That's a whole different discussion. Bernie, we should give a series on the book that you gave me, How Jesus Became Christian. It's fascinating. David Goldberg also read this book. It took me a long time. You read it too? What a great, I highly recommend it. To me, it's like a thesis because it goes through everything with the Sadducees and the Pharisees, you know. But Rashi is saying that the death penalty is only applicable for the taking of the mother's life. So it follows, therefore, that the life of the fetus is not a capital offense. Okay, we're clear. Therefore, murder is not the reason to prohibit abortion. So murder is only if you take the mother's life. So what do our rabbis say? There are other rabbis that say, and this is a majority view. I have to say that because it's not everybody's view. Some rabbis don't agree with other rabbis. The majority view is, although the verse spoke about the death penalty, it didn't really mean the death penalty. What it meant, see, David, it didn't really mean, they always do this. Well, we didn't really mean the death penalty. We meant pay. You have to pay back. Well, there is truth to this. Think about this. Esther pokes my eye out. Intentionally, she's mad. I didn't let her do Hallel on Rosh Chodesh. So she comes to me, she pokes my eye out, and she says, there, that you deserve that. So I say an eye for an eye. I'm going to poke her eye out. It doesn't work that way. What you say is, oh, I forgot, Esther, you had I promised you I would let you say Hallel. You didn't do Hallel. It's my fault. You apologize. But that's apologizing is a payment. You know that? Like it's a form of, in a sense, of a payment. But not when it comes to Jewish law with cutting off someone's arm. I can't cut your arm off or poke your eye out and say, I'm sorry I poked your eye out. I'm sorry I cut your arm off with a chainsaw. I'm sorry I kicked you in the stomach and you, God forbid, lost a baby. I'm sorry isn't good enough to the rabbis. It helps, maybe, but payment helps. Because now the person who lost an arm or a leg or a finger or an eye, it doesn't mean, how is it going to help if I poke her back in the eye and take her eye out? It doesn't do any good. But if I give her some money, Esther, you didn't say, Hallel, I'm giving you $2 million. That she'll take, you see? Because that's a better thing to do. Money talks, right? So the rabbis know this, and that's why the majority is pay. Well, if that's the majority opinion, that there's financial compensation, Rashi doesn't say that that's the majority view, but it's a method that works. If one opinion is stated briefly and not discussed, then what's explained and discussed at great length is by Rashi is that the death penalty is not the rule. It doesn't really mean an eye for an eye. So if someone intends to kill person A, we'll call the person A. Not nice to use names. Esther, I would never poke you in the eye. If somebody goes and intends, they mean it. They want to go, and they kill A. They aim the gun at person A, but it misses. I miss person A. I want to kill person A. I miss person A. We see this on the news, don't we? And they accidentally kill person B, the innocent person across the street. I went to shoot person A. I missed person A. I accidentally killed person B. There was an intention to murder, but on the other hand, I didn't intend to kill the victim that I killed. I wanted to kill A. Am I going to go to court and say, I'm not responsible for person B getting killed? I wasn't aiming for person B. Person B standing across the street. Not my fault he's standing there. I was trying to kill person A. What are they going to say to me in court? Oh, well, pardon us. If you didn't mean to kill person A and you only shot person B by accident, go ahead. It's not the Wild West. So the Gemara says that in this case, the person is exempt from the death penalty. This isn't real law. This isn't our law today, Gemara. And it's not called enough intention. Instead, you have to pay the inheritors to the victim to figure out whatever that dollar amount is going to be. And then you evaluate the victim as though he was a slave that was being sold in the market. All right, he's a chazan. He accidentally got killed. I wanted to kill the butcher. We need the butcher. We need kosher meat. We accidentally killed the chazan. He was standing across the street. Big deal. We'll get another chazan. Esther knows how to be a chazan. She'll be the chazan. Give the family a roast beef and a brisket and everything will be okay. It doesn't work like that, right? In real law. But in the Gemara, that's what they're saying. What is this person's worth? It's terrible, isn't it? If the person's a slave and they're not worth too much, why do we have to pay so much? But the person's the mayor of the city. He's an important person, and your family relies on his salary. He gets a big fat salary, and there's lots of money being paid to the family. You're in bigger tsuras because now you have to pay more money because that person has more value. They're putting not the same value on every single person's life. That's not how we do business here in Toronto, but this is the Gemara talking at that time. And we're not even talking about today, so don't get upset about this. We're talking a long time ago, and we'll get to today eventually. But I want you to understand the thinking of the rabbis at this time. In my notes, the footnotes that I'm giving you in the stories about person A and B or about the butcher being worth more than the chazan, those aren't in my notes. Those are my thoughts based on the notes that I have to give you a parable, if that's the right word, or a story around the concept that we're trying to deal with. And intention in real law today is not necessarily always the way we follow. But the Gemara at that time put a value on people, different values on different people, what their value was. How did Jews acquire slaves more than ever? It wasn't like they played a poker game and they lost, and so you'll come and be my slave. It was about the person tried to steal a goat from me, and he got caught, and the authorities said, "You stole a goat from Marshall. You're gonna work for him now for 3 years to pay back the goat." That was the slave. You didn't always want a slave. A slave was not an easy thing for a Jew to have because we had fences, we had gezeras, we had laws to protect those slaves. You couldn't say to the slave, "You sleep in the barn with the cows, I'll sleep in my big fluffy bed." Jewish law in the Gemara says you have to give them the big fluffy bed. You can sleep in the barn unless you have 2 fluffy beds, and then you both can sleep in a fluffy bed. You can't have steak and potatoes and they get, tofu stir fry. By the way, I like tofu stir fry, but I'm just saying that, you have to offer them the same thing that you're sharing with them, that they're giving to them. You can't give them craft dinner and you're having a big fancy meal. It doesn't work that way. So when we talk about a person's value and their Gemara is relating to a slave, we have to be cautious and understand a slave in Judaism is not like other people that had a slave that they could treat them badly and be mean to them. It was a huge obligation. But listen to this. There's a very big problem here. And it refers to the Gemara again. The Gemara, you understand the commentaries on the Talmud. The middle of the Talmud is the Mishnah. And then around it, you have all the Gemaras. And it talks in the Masechet. Masechet means the volume. It talks about in the volume of Nida. Nida is about the woman's cycle of menstruation. And Nida means separation. It doesn't mean a period. Although, when we're talking about it in today's language, we talk about a woman is having that period, is having a period. Well, in that Masechet, which the reason that the rabbis were so involved in Nida in the first place, because why should these men be deciding what women's rules and laws should be, was because they were trying to protect the Kohanim, the priests. The priests could not handle even food or touch food that was handled by someone who was in Nida. So if somebody was having a woman was having a period, and these Kohanim are doing sacrifice in the temple, and they become impure, they become tamei, they have to be tahara, they have to be pure. By the way, today everybody's impure. Everybody's impure. All the Kohanim are impure, I'm impure, you're impure, we're all the same. Why? Because we don't have, even though Orthodox Jews, hello, you hear me? I froze, you hear me? All right. Even though in Masechet Nida, it talks about separation. Am I still frozen? No, I'm okay. All right. Even though it talks about Nida and separation, it's doing it for the sake of the priests to be able to perform the sacrifices in the Beit HaMikdash in the temple. So if a woman who was having her menstrual cycle,
you were cutting out,
cooked food, and she didn't. I'm still cutting out.
You were. Now we can hear you. It's internet.
You can hear me? I'm sorry. Internet's. You know where the internet is great now? Dorton, up north. Because I put in Starlink. I'll tell you about Starlink later. It's fascinating. Elon Musk put all these satellites in the sky, And I thought, this is going to be challenging. I have to set up internet up there so I can do work up there. I took the dish, I laid it on the front lawn in the tripod, I put it there. You take your cell phone and you push Starlink, and the dish by itself goes like this on the finished, done. That was it. Nothing. Perfect internet. It's the craziest thing. But anyway, it's better than it is here in the city. So what they were concerned with is the Kohanim. If I take food and I give that food to a priest, a Kohen, then he becomes impure. How can he do a sacrifice? That's what that whole Masechet is about, separation, to protect the Kohanim mostly. So what they talk about in that particular Masechet is a newborn baby. And it says, anyone who kills that newborn baby is liable to the death penalty. It's written in the Torah that a person who kills any other person will be put to death. It says, mot yumat. The Gemara asks, who holds this idea? And the big problem is that it can't be in accordance with, they say, Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, who taught us and does not agree with the death penalty, that it should be imposed for killing a newborn baby. And Rabbi Shimon said, a nefel is a stillborn baby. He says, if the baby dies inside the uterus, it's considered a stillborn. According to Rabbi Shimon, if a baby dies 2 seconds or immediately after being born, then it's not regarded as a life. It's considered a stillbirth. 2 seconds. A baby which was born and took 2 breaths, according to the Gemara, and dies is considered a stillbirth. If a baby lives 1 minute or a half an hour or a day, at what point does the baby leave the category of being called a stillborn? Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says it's 30 days. A shloshim, a period of 30 days. If a baby who has actually survived after 30 days, it's considered a live baby. We don't follow that, by the way, today. I'm just telling you what he said back then. Up to the 30-day cutoff point, he says we are uncertain. Anyway, it goes on and on and on, all about Rabbi Shimon Gamliel's point of view. I won't go too far into it. You can study it if you want, but the gist is that we've now added another layer. There's one more layer of proof that the Gemara, that destroying the life of a fetus cannot be considered an act of murder, which will carry the penalty. There's no viability in that yet. There's no proof that destroying a fetus is considered an act of murder. Well, who does the Shulchan Aruch? When we follow the laws of the Shulchan Aruch, that's what we follow today. Who does Rav Yosef Karo, who wrote the Shulchan Aruch, who does he mostly rely upon? Somebody has to know this answer because I say it at every course that we've done so far. I bet you Isaac knows who he mostly relies upon. Maybe Isaac's sleeping, I don't know. So anyway, it's the Rambam. Isaac, are you awake? It's the Rambam. He follows Maimonides. So he first and foremost, he follows the Rambam. So, when we study Torah, and we always say, Rambam says, Maimonides says. We learn it, we go, okay, we learn it and we forget it. When you study Jewish law, it's all of a sudden Rambam comes to life. He's all of a sudden becomes more important than ever before, because it's not just what Rambam says about on Torah, it's that we base our halacha, our Jewish law, on that. We base all of our Jewish law. See, Isaac said, sorry, my iPad takes a while to answer. All right, well, chime in anytime you want. We're always happy to hear your opinions. So the passage in the Ram, and by the way, shout out if you have something you want to say over top of me. I'm happy in the class. If you do that, I don't mind a comment by any of you at any time. The passage in the Rambam around all of the discussions which we will be having is going to involve what every posek going forward in the next few classes on this are going to base their opinion on. That's pretty heavy. That's pretty serious. Every single rabbi is going to base their decisions on the Rambam. So you can see how important the Rambam. So now when we start to see this, we go, oh, Rambam says, Rambam's. It's not just, it's that Jewish law, the foundation of halacha is first based on the Rambam. But we have to also understand that Rambam, although he was a physician in the 3rd and the 12th century. He's not a physician today in 2022. And things do change. And rabbis have to adjust their positions of stringency and leniency based on his opinion, but staying in accordance with it, which means we respect that opinion and we work with it and we find a way to work with his opinions so we can create something that is going to work in today's society. So there's a prohibition, there's a law. That's what halacha is. Halacha is just nothing but it's either isur or it's mutar. Isur means prohibited, mutar means permitted. That's it. It's two things. You don't have to know anything else. And that's what Rambam wanted you to do. He wanted you to follow his book so we don't have to have these Wednesday morning discussions. He just said, just read my book and it's all there. Something is either permitted or it's not permitted. But I find it interesting to discuss how they came to the answers. So he says there's a prohibition of the Torah not to have mercy. The next 3 words that I'm giving you, so stay up for is the most important 3 words in all of what we're going to learn on this topic. The 3 words are al nefesh harodef. Al nefesh harodef. What is a rodef? A rodef is someone who is a pursuer. If someone's chasing you with a gun, you're going to try and run away from the person with the gun. Why are you running away from the person with the gun? Because the person with the gun is going to kill you. Maybe he's not going to kill you. Maybe I don't know that he's carrying a toy plastic squirt gun. All I know is what I see. I see somebody chasing somebody that I know and love with a gun. You know what? I see somebody chasing somebody I don't even know and love. I just see them chasing as the stranger on the street with a gun. Do I have time to think, is it a plastic squirt gun? Is it a real gun? Is it a fake? Oh boy, are the police ever having to deal with this today, aren't they? I wouldn't want to be a policeman. And I'm glad that we have them. And I'm glad that they work so hard and do what they do. All I know is what my eyes see. My eyes see a rodef, a person chasing another person with a gun. I have to kill that person. I have to kill that rodef. Otherwise, that other person is going to get killed. You know that if somebody was chasing somebody that you care about in your family with a gun, you'd kill them. Because what are you going to do? Just stand there and say, not me, he's chasing them. It's not what we do. That's a rodef. That's a pursuer. So the observer, I'm the observer and I'm standing on the street and he sees, and it looks like person B is trying to kill person C. And the Torah says, you're not allowed to have mercy on the pursuer of B. I see B is trying to kill C. I can't have mercy on B and go, it's probably only a squirt gun. No, it looks like a revolver to me. A real one, a loaded gun. Looks to me like he's trying to kill C. I have an obligation according to the Torah, according to Jewish law, to do whatever, oh, there goes my internet. By the Torah to do whatever I can do to save that person from the pursuer. If B is trying to kill C, I'm not allowed to show mercy to B. So if possible, drastic means should be applied. Whatever that is. If the only way you can save the victim is by killing the pursuer, then that's what you have to do. The halacha, the Jewish law, prohibiting us for having mercy, it prevents us from feeling sorry for B who's trying to kill C, or on whatever the pursuer or whoever the pursuer is, has nothing to do with the background of the situation. Has nothing to do with the background. I know that B is a drunk. I know that C is married to the drunk and he's a drunk too. They're both drunks. And the two of them are always fighting and they're always in trouble. And it's an awful situation. All I know is that right now, I see B with a gun, he's trying to kill C. There's no time to start investigating. Is it a squirt gun? Is it a plastic gun? Is it made? Now you can do printed guns. I hear they're printing them with computers and with I don't even understand it. I don't get it. I think they should if they're going to do that, we should eliminate printers. You have to go to a place that's licensed by the government and print there. You know, these machines that print those things that can print actual components and parts, you should outlaw them, make them illegal. You have to license them by the government and register them that you're using them like a gun. Anyway, one has nothing to do with the other. The situation has nothing to do with it. You can't investigate, and therefore this halacha applies even if that person B who is chasing C has no intention on killing C. He doesn't want to kill C. He's not trying to kill C. I see two 52-year-old men and they're playing cowboys well, I shouldn't say cowboys you can't say cowboy. They're playing cowboys and indigenous people. And he's chasing. When I was a kid, we played cowboys and Indians. We don't use that term today anymore, right? But everything I have to change. We have to live in today's times. And they're chasing each other and they're playing a game. Now, if I went into an arena where I see a paintball or whatever it is, you know where you're entering, you know what you're in for. But on the street down Wilmington Avenue, people don't usually chase each other with guns. Not lately, anyway. So if you can't investigate and you have no time, then the perpetrator may not have intention, and intention means nothing in the situation at all. Therefore, the observer knows what he or she is seeing in that moment. We're seeing a pursuer. So Rambam draws an important conclusion. He says, our sages instruct us that the pregnant lady who is having difficulty in giving birth, there's a problem here. She's having trouble because there's an issue. There's a problem. The problem is that, are you ready for this? This is what the sages say. This is what the Gemara says. So if it's very graphic what the Gemara says. That's why we're not supposed to study Gemara. We don't have to study Gemara. Rambam says, just learn what I write. And he says that what you have to do, if the baby is threatening the mother's life, the baby becomes the rodef. The baby inside the fetus is going to kill the mother. This is in the 12th century. We didn't know how to carefully open up someone and take out the baby and save the woman's life. So you have to go inside the woman and you have to dismember the fetus. You have to cut it up into pieces and you have to kill it. And it doesn't matter whether it was today, whether you're administrating a drug which will kill or destroy the fetus. It's permissible because the fetus is a pursuer and it's trying to kill the mother. And we have an obligation. All we know is we see what we see. We have to save the mother. We have to save the mother. The mother's life is in danger. And therefore, in a situation where the mother's life is in danger, it would be, according to our rabbis, correct to perform an abortion. How is the United States going to deal with these issues? Okay, it's not our problem. If the birth process has already begun and the baby's head,
Sorry, Marshall, sorry to intervene, but it is our problem. Because what happens in the United States, and it will happen, happens in Canada eventually. We're seeing the exact same trend.
we
The
need to
Americans-
we need to make sure it doesn't happen. But that's a political
How are we
discussion.
going to do that? It's a complicated story, but
Yeah.
what we're seeing in the United States is a tremendous backward trend towards the dark ages,
I
and
agree.
this will affect Canadians in many ways. And I'm scared. My daughter, who lives in New Jersey, has already planned an exit to Canada. And that's frightening in and of itself.
It is. It's and then you run into Christian fundamentalists, and I do that, and
They're taking over.
and what they understand is they think differently than we do, than some of us do. I won't say than we do because I can't speak for everybody in this Zoom room. You know, I can only speak for myself. That we look at they're one of the questions I was asked by a Christian fundamentalist up on the lake one time was, he said to me, how do you see yourself? And I said, I go to a mirror and there I am, you know. No, that's not what they mean. They mean, like, how do you see yourself in the next world with Jesus? How are you going to get there if you're not repenting for your sins and you don't believe? If you don't believe, I said, but I do. I don't believe in Jesus. I believe in something different. I believe, no, it's not good. You know, we don't go around pushing our religion. See, proselytizing is not really so much our way today. We don't run around doing that. We're not standing on the street, we fight Jews for Jesus because we want to help ourselves. So we have Jews for Judaism. But to answer your question, David, it's a big problem. It should be on people's minds for sure.
But Marshall, today we're speaking about the rights of women, and in a broader sense, and that is precisely what the Americans are denying, are the rights of women. The rights of women to choose what to do with their own bodies. And that's frightening.
I
That
agree.
this will be denied to half the population effectively.
Right. Well, it's worth a discussion and a class and bring ideas together and talk about it. And maybe even as a shul, maybe it's a program that the shul would be interested in discussing and tying it in with halacha. But we really need to be concerned about it because here, already back from the time of Rambam in the 12th century, he's already finding leniencies according to the Torah. Maybe that's what distinguishes us from Christian fundamentalists. We were way ahead of our time back in the 12th century because at first they were saying, a pursuer, a rodef, al nefesh harodef. You have someone to save a life, you have to destroy a pursuer. And here is a political argument that is saying that 100% it's asur, it's completely not allowed. And they're making decisions for everyone. So it is important, and we should think about that. But I'll tie it up today with Rambam and this whole principle of the rodef, because it's going to be what we are going to be basing all of the modern poskim, all of the modern rabbis on. And we're going to come to them next class. We're going to see what the modern rabbis are saying about this. I always say, I hope that all of you at the end of the day will be satisfied, because these are difficult decisions that the rabbis were making back a long time ago. But what Rambam was saying here was that if a mother's life is in danger in any way, then it would be correct. And it says, Rambam says, if the process has already begun, that's where I was at. I was talking about the baby's head, right? I said, so if the baby's head has already been delivered from the birth canal and the head was out, then it says, according to Rambam, you can no longer harm the baby because the whole baby's head is out, even if the mother's life is in danger. Now, this was Rambam's thought back then. So if the baby's head is emerged and it's out, now we'll have to decide, what does that mean? Just the crown of the head, a half a head, a whole head? We don't know how much yet. We'll talk about that. But what Rambam is saying is, if the baby's head is out of the birth canal, then you have to work to save that baby's life, even if it means now it's a threat to the mother's life. These are very difficult decisions to make. Very, very difficult decisions. And the Rambam ends with another 4 words, which we'll revisit later. And he says, Zehu Tivo Shel Olam. That this is the nature of the world. It's the nature of the universe, the world, the planet that we live in, the nature of where we are. As a tree grows when it gets watered and the sun comes out, and the same way that everything else happens in nature, whether it's the wind, whether it's the sun, the rain, all of nature, he said the nature of the world is that sometimes these difficult decisions have to be made, that the baby's head is out, it's emerged, and we have to work towards saving that. Now, there are a lot of problems with this passage. The biggest problem is that Rambam seems to have embraced 2 opposing or 2 contradictory principles here. And these 2 principles can't live with each other. So we're going to have to resolve them. On one hand, the Rambam embraced the principle of a rodef, which commands us to kill one person to save another. On one hand, that's what he said, remember? You have to kill somebody if you see the person pursuing someone else. And on the other time, at the same time, Rambam is embracing a principle of ein doche nefesh b'pnei nefesh, that it's prohibited to kill one person to save another. You don't kill one person to save another person. It's not what we do. But both of these principles can't live together. So I'll leave you hanging on that. We'll resolve it next class. And after we resolve it, we're going to go right from that into Rav Moshe Feinstein, and we'll see what he has to say about it. And we'll look at Rav Yehuda Waldenberg as we always do. And then we'll move on to another topic. So I'm not going to keep you for 6 weeks on this. We're going to finish it off next week, but we're going to find a balance and a way of taking these 2 opposing principles of Rambam and finding a ground which we can live with in Judaism. Okay, so I'll leave you with that. So what did we learn today? Al rodef hanefesh, al nefesh rodef, that you have a pursuer, you have to try and save the mother if the mother's life is in danger. But yet we also learned that we're not supposed to kill somebody else to save another life. So we'll find that balance. Okay, so I'll let it go there. Are there any questions?
I have a question. In an abortion, it could be, for whatever reason, the mother wants to terminate the pregnancy. Let's say this is after there's a heartbeat. Can she, halachically,
Is the baby
viable?
not been born yet? The answer is maybe.
Oh, thank you.
Well, but if I tell you that, there's nothing to stay tuned for. What are you going to come back to me for?
Because I like you.
You might listen later, even if you can't come to the session, but I promise you that you'll be happy with the answer. Don't forget, I'll let you, so I don't want you to struggle and suffer all week worrying. You shouldn't worry all week.
Remember me all week.
Remember that there's other principles that the modern rabbis look at. That what does it mean? What is a rodef, a pursuant, a pursuer, and the pursuant can also mean other illnesses and other forms. I'll give you an example, and we'll revisit it later. I don't want to let too much out because then I've got nothing to talk about. Think about this, and it'll help you for you should sleep at night. What do you do in the case of somebody who is very depressed? It's a mental illness, that form of depression. That could be a pursuer. There's all kinds of things to consider here. It's not only the immediate physical danger. There's a lot to consider here. This could be months and months and months of discussions. I don't say I'm an expert. I'm just sharing the knowledge that I learned with you because I think it's interesting. It's worth going to medical ethics seminars and really learning and studying and learning. I'm quite interested now, and I attend and I listen. But I want to share the sources, the old sources and the modern sources. And at the end of the day, I think you'll see that there's a balance. There's a balance. All right, so let's leave it. We're going to discuss about what is considered a viable living baby, how much of the baby has to be born, what is considered a pursuer, what will be considered a time frame and a span or an illness that will allow a woman to according to Jewish law, to halacha, to have an abortion. We'll finish it off. We'll continue next week, and we'll hopefully resolve it together. Right now we have a machloket within Rambam with himself. He's arguing with himself, so we'll have to solve that first. Go ahead, Bernie.
It all comes down to that age-old question of when does life begin?
That's right. It's true. All right.
According to the rabbis,
Yes.
when the dog dies and the kids leave home, that's when life begins.
Very
I'm
good.
almost there. I've got the last kids leaving to go to university next year, and the dog is 11. So I guess I'll.
Life begins.
Okay. May the dog live and be well for many years to come. All right. I love it. All right. Anyway, everybody be well. And let's get together again next week. There is a change. We're going to try a couple of weeks earlier. I know it's not for everybody. It'll be online just in case, but it's going to be 9:15. It's earlier. Why am I doing that? Because I think it'll free your day up. It'll give you more time later in the day to get to other things that are important to you. Okay, so let's try it.
That's starting next week, Marcia?
Yeah, let's start next week with it. Let's give it a shot. Let's see. If only Esther shows up, then I know that David, then I know that we have to move it. So we'll find. Don't do it on purpose, though. And
But you have to record it.
Thank you, Ruth and Mark, for your generosity, and thank you, Faye, and thank you, everyone, and John for being here, and Sorrel, who's quiet and there, and Tina, who joined us today. Tina, I'm glad you were here. And,
Marshall, if the time change doesn't work, please make sure that it goes into,
Being recorded.
make sure we get a notice somehow.
I know who all of you are, and I'll send a notice. We will take care of you. There's not that many I'll make sure. Okay. All right.
I'm good at not 10:30 maybe, but not before.
You're not good at
Last one
9:15?
for next week.
I'm not.
Four Jewish mothers are discussing when the fetus is viable, and they go on all different directions and tangents, and it seems to be going nowhere. And one mother gets up and she says, I know. Fetus is viable when they get their residency. And they all
Right.
nod.
All
Yeah.
right. Very good.
Thank you, Marshall.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
Marshall.
you.
Have a good
Bye,
week.
everyone.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.